Hi, I'm Wayne Rogers. I'm from Connecticut. Started making music around 78, 79 with a band called Crystallized Movements. We had a bunch of records out, and then when that broke up around 91, I had a band called Magic Hour with Damon Krukowski and Naomi Yang. We were around for a couple of years, and since then I've been in the Major Stars and Borb and Worm Doom and Vermonster and all sorts of other stuff. I was a soul kid. Like 69, 70, I used to go to King's, and they'd have singles for 69 cents on those big cardboard, psychedelic pieces of cardboard to make sure you didn't stick them under your arm and walk out. And I figured out early on that the Stax label ones and the Volt label ones had the best music on them. So I used to just, save my pennies, and every week I'd go to record stores. And it was mostly soul. And then I got a copy of Shocking Blue Venus, and then my brother brought home the first Black Sabbath album. That started steering me away. Our first record came out in 1983, Crystallized Movements Mind Disaster, the first Twisted Village record. There was a hardcore network that was pretty much in place by that time because of SST and Discord and some of the labels that managed to make it past 3 releases. But if you weren't part of that, you weren't really part of anything. I mean, if you lived in LA, you could be part of the Paisley Underground if you were within that, sphere or whatever, and there were little regionalized scenes. But as far as internationally, like, you were in a punk band or you weren't really in a band. And so we pressed 130 copies of the record, and some record dealers took them, and that's when a local punk dealer, Chuck Warner, bought a bunch of copies, and he sent them to some record dealers he knew, who sent them to some people in England, and who sent them to magazines and stuff. So that's how we sort of, after a while, got known by those people. And Byron at Forced Exposure, I think, got his first copy off of Chuck, and Chuck Warner kind of was the one who distributed all that initially, the 100 copies I sold him. So pretty much, everything that happened in the first few years were off that 100 copies. But there was it wasn't a loved record to most people. I mean, putting out, kind of a psychedelic record with 9-minute guitar solos on it in 1983 wasn't really gonna network you to anybody. It was a door closer, but oh well. I buy records. I started when I was 2.5. Christmas 1967, I got my first turntable, and I really don't know what happened after that, except as far as I can remember, I've bought records. Yeah, it's all a blur, really. I don't know how it happened. I don't know what the connections were. You know, Kings, then, you know, import shops, and then gold mine, and then, you know, friends of friends, and crazy guys from upstate New York who come to Connecticut record conventions with all this, you know, these crazy records that you never heard of. And, you know, it was much more, you know, word of mouth then, particularly if you were starting to collect late 60s stuff. You know, the garage stuff was always popular, but if you were looking for something, you know, with a bit of, you know, guitar meat on it, those, you know, when I started collecting that stuff, it was a pretty small scene. It was mostly people in Europe, and it was really, you know, word of mouth. There was a couple of guys in the U.S. who did it who disappeared, you know, by like 85 or so. Keith Zaid, if he's out there. Nobody remembers Keith Zaid. He was the first person to find Plastic Cloud, I think, so. My people. My mentor. You know, for the first few years, it was just figuring out, you know, what to do and what we could do. I mean, all those New York No Wave singles, I think, were, you know, even more than the psychedelic stuff initially. That was the big, you know, spark. It's just like I heard the Teenage Jesus and DNA singles. There's a little shop in Connecticut in a mall that carried those circa like 80, 81. I used to go there every week, and you know, when I first heard Baby Doll by Teenage Jesus, I was just like, you can do anything. I mean, punk says you can do anything, but this woman is doing anything. And it just, you know, blew my mind. And so a lot of that, you know, a lot of the early Crystallized Movements stuff, we did a retrospective album a few years ago called Damaged Lights, and it's, you know, heavily influenced by that stuff. So there was that, and then, you know, Pebbles 1 came out, and we were just like, shit, the litter, listen to this stuff, you know, and, you know, got sort of heavy Anglo for a while, Yardbird's creation, and, you know, early Who, where, you know, you could just, it didn't matter what the song was, you could put a freak out in the middle, and that was liberating. It's just like, you know, okay, this song's folkier than this song, you can still freak out in the middle of it. And so that was a good revelation. So I don't know, maybe we're still there. You know, and then we started doing like sort of more improvised stuff around 89, 90 with the Borb records, and realizing that we could just, you know, wing it and still make something that sounded vaguely, you know, interesting. So we sort of go off and come back, and, you know, Heathen Shame is kind of a bit of a return to that. Yeah, Major Stars is a rock and roll group. I think that's everything. summer of '86, and we took a liking to each other. And yeah, just started spending all our time together, and that was about when we were working on the second Crystallized Movements album. And she played clarinet and a little bit of guitar. I hadn't done much with it. And she's on the second Crystallized Movements album. I think she bangs a pot or something. But in I think it was summer of we finished that record, and then early '88, our guitar player Eric Arn went out west to go to college to study science, and suddenly we needed a guitar player. And it was just like, we were still in Tallinn, Connecticut, and it wasn't like Boston where you could find somebody with other interests. That wasn't an option. So, it just, Scott, who's the bass player, was, I taught him how to play bass. He was a friend of mine from high school, and so it seemed natural that I would, just teach the, closest person to play guitar. That was Kate, and she picked it up in like 2 months, and she pretty quickly, she joined in September, what was it? She joined in like June '88, and we started recording that record in September, so she was a quick study. And she pretty quickly, we call her style elephant guitar. It's pretty much what we invented years ago, and it still fits, I think. And she came up with her own style pretty quickly. Very quickly. Thurston Moore is from Connecticut. NRBQ is from Connecticut. After that, you really have to start scratching your head. There's not a lot. And yeah, we had a trailer in Windham, Connecticut, circa like '90 to '92, where we did like the last Vermonster record and the Borb records, and it was nice. We had a third bedroom that we made into a studio, 10x10 studio. It was cramped, but it worked. We bought our own equipment. That's when we bought the Tascam 388, which is still in service to this day. And yeah, that's when we started making our own records in our own place rather than going to studios. So that was a big jump. But then, yeah, when we decided to, we very seldom played in town or anything. We were always driving to Boston to shows or New York to shows, and so when we got married, we just figured, well, this would be a good time to just jump and see where we land. So we moved up here a couple weeks after we got married, and we never left. We're still here.
So,
Magic Markers are from Hartford, though. That's why they're the greatest band in the country. One of the reasons. we moved up here September '92 after we got married, and finished off the last Crystallized Movements record that fall. And then Scott was still living in Connecticut, and then our drummer had moved to Western Mass, and it had never been easy to get everybody in one place. But us moving up, when we moved up, our drummer was here, and then she moved to Western Mass like a month or two later. And at that point, it seemed obvious that, you know, it was just a little too crazy to keep together, and we could use something a little more permanent and something that could get together, you know, once every couple of weeks instead of once a month. So yeah, we broke up Crystallized Movements without really knowing what we were going to do. We just kind of sat around for a couple of weeks and threw ideas at each other. And we had played with Galaxy 500 like 2 or 3 times. The first time by chance, and then the second couple times at their request. So they'd already liked what we were doing. They had broken up the year before, and we were shopping at In Your Ear, I think, and we saw Damon and Naomi Moore's Sad Hits had just come out. And we were looking through records, and we were like, oh my god, they're making records again. Hold it, they play bass and drums! So yeah, we got home and looked in the phone book, and there they were, and we called them, and they came over. They were a little apprehensive about being in a band again, because the previous band had just split, and they were started just doing their own thing at that point. And we played, and everyone liked it, and we were impressed that they never stopped playing a song first. That was our, you know, still kind of our criterion. If we're the first people to stop a song, we're good. That's a good sign. And, you know, we just brought a couple of things out. I can't remember what they were, if they were my songs, or I think they were my songs. I can't remember what they were, or maybe we just played. But yeah, we'd go for like 15 minutes, and then Kate and I would just be like, okay. I thought that was a good sign, that they would just merrily keep on playing without ceasing if nobody stopped them. They're like, that's the rhythm section for us. Magic Hour broke up in the spring of '96, and then we opened the store that September. So we were like, what are we going to do? Let's try this. There's a friend of ours, Josh Burkett, who you might know, who runs the Mystery Train out in Amherst, had just opened up his own shop. So a light bulb went over our heads. We were like, oh, I bet we could do that. So we opened that, and then, you know, after a couple of months, we were like, okay, we've got a shop. This is great. Let's get a band again. Because we hadn't been playing much that summer. So Dave was already in Vermonster. Tom had been in Vermonster and Bore and Luxurious Bags, and they were already regulars. And so David had moved away for a while, so he wasn't around. But he had just moved back to town, so we grabbed him, and yeah, we started January '97 and made a bunch of records. And then Dave left beginning of this year, and we got it was kind of weird because it was sort of developed into a unit, pretty strong unit. We were like, what do we do now? You can't just like replace him, because that's, you know, it didn't seem right. So we thought, well, let's make a set up. So we made it into a 6-piece. Sandra Barrett's a singer now. Tom got off bass and plays guitar now. Dave Dugan on bass. Casey Keenan on drums. It's a little, I don't know. There's a kind of a different focus to the newer stuff. I don't know. We'll see how long that lasts. But it seems we're packing a little more into shorter spaces, which I like. I think we played out the long droney jam. I think it was time for a change. So.